And Sudan have rejected U.S. plans to have Marines protect their American diplomatic interests after a wave of violent protest on Friday targeting Western embassies. In the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, at least 3 people were killed in clashes targeting the embassies of the United States, German, and British embassies. In Yemen, 4 people were killed outside the American embassy in Sana'a. Jane Ferguson is in Sana'a and is on the line with us now. And Jane, I don't quite get this statement from the Parliament. The Marines in question are already in country. Is this for local consumption?
It could very well be. It could be politically motivated. It is for opposition to President Hadi, for any of his opponents, it is a strong weapon against him to say to the public, well, you know, look, he's invited American soldiers in here. It could also simply be symbolic. People wanting to put their hand up and say, we would like it on the record that we don't support this. And it's also worth pointing out that the Yemeni parliament did make this statement. It doesn't necessarily mean that Yemen itself or the Yemen administration has rejected this. Hadi has not rejected the presence of the U.S. Marines in the embassy. And in fact, this, of course, comes against a backdrop of Hadi being very, very closely associated with the U.S.'s counterterrorism efforts in the country and increased drone strikes in the south. And
hello, everyone. Welcome to GGN. Today is Monday, September 17th, 2012. I'm Darko. All the headlines and links will be posted in YouTube's video description, and thank you for joining me. I'll be covering the Middle East in this first video, and then the second video I'll get into what's heating up, of course, in Asia between China and Japan, now Taiwan, which is kind of a U.S. Western proxy state. All this, of course, happening by design for a reason. There's no coincidence to the timing in that. So building up to 2012 in that December video, Libyans tried to save the U.S. ambassador. So Chris Stevens was alive when the mob found him. Now this is, of course, coming from the Associated Press, owned by the Rothschilds and that. And this is what's going across the mainstream media, which is the people that actually killed him were Al-Qaida and them, or basically Islamic extremists. These are the same groups or entities that the United States was funding in Libya to overthrow Gaddafi, and at the same time funding the Syrian rebels, which are associated with Al-Qaida and Muslim extremists. So these is the people that killed the U.S. ambassador were the same people that were supported by the West. And so the mainstream media has to go on damage control and say, well, this video was showing them trying to save them, when in fact they were actually dragging his dead body and celebrating. Ambassador Chris Stevens was still breathing when Libyans stumbled across him inside a room inside the American consulate in Benghazi, cheering, "Alive, alive, God is great." Now that's the same thing. God is great is what the rebels in Libya and Syria cheer after they slay civilians and government forces. They tried to rescue him after last week's deadly attack in eastern Libya city. A witness said a group of people gathered as the several men pulled a seemingly lifeless body from the room. He was alive, he said. No doubt his face was blackened and he was like a paralyzed person. So, according to reports, he died of asphyxiation, so smoke. Spinning the video of Ambassador Stevens, said, here's the video of the Muslim maniacs dragging the corpse of the Ambassador Stevens around while they celebrate and chant Allahu Akbar, meaning God is great in Arabic. Drudge describes it as a video purports to show the U.S. ambassador dragged, cheers from the crowd. That sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? Other sources are even less equivocal in characterizing the savagery of the crowd of terrorists, like outrage, but Hillary said they were taking him to the hospital. New video shows a crowd cheering as Ambassador Stevens is dragged through the streets, but the New York Times translated the video. Then moving on, remember this, U.S. ambassador's death was what? U.S.-backed terrorists in Syria are responsible for ambassador's death in Libya. So, Al-Qaida praises Libya consulate attack as anti-American protests subside. So, Al-Qaida is praising the attack on the Libyan U.S. embassy. Makes sense because they're the ones that are responsible for it, revealed. And they don't really, I notice all the headlines in the media right now aren't actually saying in the headlines right away what it was, which was they were warned of this just days prior and weeks prior. And remember, I just covered this last Friday by the last Libyan prime minister, about lack of security and that there was going to be an attack like this. But America was warned of the embassy attack and did nothing. Libya's current president is actually saying the consulate attack was planned by foreigners. So they're arresting a bunch of people. And he tells Face the Nation that the way these perpetrators acted and moved, and they're choosing the specific date for this so-called demonstration, this leaves us with no doubt that this was pre-planned and determined by foreigners. So I wonder who that was. Then we have Obama sending more drones and Marines to Libya, but did they ever leave is the question. Apparently, there is nothing so permanent as a temporary U.S. war. The Obama regime has ordered military reinforcements to Libya following the attack on the U.S. consulate building this week, but the truth is the drones had never left the Libyan skies, and U.S. Marines have been carrying out missions on the ground since the end of NATO's war last year. The Defense Department told Wired's Danger Room that the drones never left. Yes, we have been flying CAP's combat air patrols since the war ended, said Army Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Warren of the Pentagon. The way of Benghazi gets no-fly zone as protests continue, so now they're putting up another no-fly zone. I don't think it ever actually left, right? If they have been doing drones, and they did have a no-fly zone imposed when Gaddafi was still in power. So the airspace over Benghazi has been declared a no-fly zone after the death of the U.S. ambassador and 3 other Americans. This is something that many of you have probably heard over the weekend. Marines at the U.S. Embassy in Egypt were not given live ammunition. USMC blogs claim the U.S. Marines who attempted to protect the American Embassy in Egypt were faced with a big problem. They were not given access to live ammunition. And multiple reports, including the posts on several USMC blogs, Ambassador to Egypt Ann Patterson was quoted saying, "Do not permit U.S. Marine Guards to carry live ammunition." At least one report claims she neutralized any U.S. military capability that was dedicated to preserve her life and protect the embassy. So if correct, the move would be directly against the goal of protecting U.S. sovereign soil. According to the report, she did not defend U.S. sovereign territory and betrayed her oath of office. She neutered the Marines who posted to defend the embassy, trusting the Egyptians over the Marines. Then you even have the Prime Minister in Egypt saying that some were actually paid to protest, so rent a mob, kind of like in Russia from the State Department. And I was kind of wondering if this is what was going on here. You have U.S. orders embassy staff to leave Tunis and, of course, Tunisia and the Sudan on Saturday after both diplomatic posts were attacked. So yeah, they're ordering non-essential staff to leave its embassies. Also, you have the State Department setting up a 24-hour monitoring team for embassy crisis. So the State Department, maybe the monitoring team for the embassies are actually the rent-a-mobs that they're in charge of. But there is one thing that's for sure, and that's even in the alternative news sites, I'm seeing that it's not being covered. I don't know, the way I see it accurately, because they're turning it into a political thing. It's about Obama, or it's about this film. And the truth of the matter is people in the Mid-East have been pissed off at America, and a lot of countries around the world have been pissed off at America imperialism, right? And so, like I mentioned before, the release of this video, it's very timely around 9/11, was to do the same exact thing, to instill more hatred. And get that good neocon, that good ignorant, naive American anti-Muslim sentiment going. So what's behind the anti-US protests in Yemen? Only one thing seems clear. It probably isn't a YouTube video that has protesters in Yemen so angry. The protests that began in the U.S. Embassy in Cairo on Tuesday have now spread to the U.S. post in Sana'a, Yemen, where demonstrations are believed to have been sparked by the anti-Islam film on YouTube. But Yemen has more reasons than an offensive 14-minute video to be upset with the U.S. We asked Jeb Boone, who has reported for the Global Post from Yemen and was formerly managing editor. He said frustrations with the U.S. has been building up for some time now and probably has very little to do with the film controversy. They're incredibly angry with the U.S. over civilian deaths and drone strikes, just like I said in Al Jazeera at the end of that report, and how the State Department handled the uprising, supporting the settlement that granted former President Saleh immunity from prosecution. Also in Yemen, you have secession. There's parts of Yemen that want to secede from the main establishment, and the U.S. is supporting the main establishment, and anyone that wants to secede is called terrorist. So, and these were articles that I didn't even get a chance to get to last week. Yemenis protests against U.S. assassination drone attacks. This is from September 3rd, and then there was one a couple days later blocking main roads in the central city to basically protest drone strikes that killed 13 Yemeni civilians, including 2 women, and this was after missiles fired from a U.S. drone hit 2 vehicles. In Pakistan also, Pakistan parties uniting against drones. Political parties are stepping up opposition to the U.S. drone strikes and planned operation to cleanse the border area of militants. So now, says here, the Imran Khan of Pakistan-led Pakistan Movement Party staunchly opposed U.S. drones and military campaign. But it goes on and says as elections get near, the other parties are now trying to exploit anti-American sentiments and muster electoral support. So this is just like in Egypt. This is like everywhere else. They're just playing politics, and it's pretty damn sick. Australia police arrest man on terror offenses. So this is everything that we saw afterwards. September 12th. In Australia, they arrest a man on terror offenses. Of course, on raids. U.S. Consulate in Berlin receives a suspicious envelope in which the girl started to get faint and have difficulty breathing. That was in Germany. Then key terror suspect held in India. They said it was described as being the biggest catch in 25 years by Indian security forces. Then here in the homeland, FBI violence over the video could spread to the United States. It warns religious groups to be on guard. So, University of Texas, right away, right? University of Texas defends bomb threat response from 9/17. They were defending their decision to wait more than an hour before evacuating due to a bomb threat. One of 3 such incidents is reported U.S. college campuses in a span of just a few hours. This is from a man claiming to belong to Al-Qaida. Then today, LSU in Louisiana orders evacuation over bomb threat. Apparently bomb threats were also made last week at the University of Texas, which we just covered, but North Dakota and Fargo and Hiram College in Ohio. And lastly, FBI arrests suspect over bomb plot. An 18-year-old man has been arrested in Chi-Town on suspicion of plotting a bomb attack. So most of these are FBI stings. And the only reason I'm covering it is because it's all timely. This is all fabricated war on terror to get you all fearful. This is what I was talking about. Tarpley, I usually have a lot of respect for his geopolitical analysis, but this one, I think he missed it. Tarpley, Middle East riots, a provocation to sink Obama. So the purpose of discrediting and carterizing the current tenant of the White House and installing Netanyahu's friend Mitt Romney in the place. So I don't think it has anything to do with left or right, and these websites, they like to talk about that, all about, it's not about left and right, and then they support third party people like Rand Paul and all them, and Rand Paul, and they're totally establishment as well. So, and then they're talking about how it's going to be if Mitt Romney gets in there, and they're trying to sink Obama, so as if Obama is really having a say. If Obama really did try to do something, he would be dead by now, right? He would be killed on public. That's what would happen if he did start to go against the powers that be, the people that put him in there, like Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or General Electric or Boeing. So what they're doing is they're missing the point here, is that there's a big kind of buildup now in the Middle East, a rearmament in the Middle East going on besides just Iran. Brent crude nears $117 amid protests over U.S.-made anti-Islam movie. So it's good for oil too, right? For all countries, for Iran, all countries. Canada, U.S. deploys extra troops overseas as protests continue. So, see, extra troops. Actually, the number is 4,000 troops, 4,000 Marines headed to Middle East as part of a Pelulu amphibious group dispatch. The final pre-deployment training was on evacuation of non-combatants from hotspots, according to U.S. military authorities. So this is true. This is, from San Diego local news there. What is this, ABC or something like that? Pelulu Group deploys to the Middle East. 3 U.S. Navy warships and an expeditionary force of Camp Pendleton-based Marines trained to extract Americans who get caught up in mob violence overseas, talking about embassies, are going on a 7-month deployment to the Middle East and Western Pacific. This is in the backdrop of what? Armada of international naval power massing in the Gulf as Israel prepares an Iran strike. The U.S. Navy is leading its largest ever war games in the Persian Gulf, with warships from 25 countries being deployed in the region. So Iran, in return, is preparing for its biggest air defense war game in history of the Islamic Republic next month. Syria's foreign minister is accusing Turkey of giving Al-Qaida access. We know this is true because I've covered this before about Turkey being the go-to location for rebel factions to rearm, recruit, and Obama signing an order to support the Syrian rebels along with France. And like Putin suggesting that the U.S. is backing Al-Qaida in Syria, talking about the rebels, we kind of already knew that. Well, the largest shipload of Libyan weapons is heading to the armed groups in Syria. The largest shipment of weapons has arrived in Turkey to be delivered to the armed groups in Syria. September 4th, CIA chief leaves Turkey after a one-day visit. Then September 6th, Turkish officers take command of Syrian rebel brigades, i.e. ex-CIA agent says there's over 50 intel agents in Turkey right now. And a U.S. top general is set to meet the Turkish general today.